2GB radio broadcaster Luke Grant joins me now from Sydney. Well, lots of disappointment there, Luke, but I tell you what, not many people confess that right now they actually drive the Holden car, and that's part of the problem.
You know what it is, isn't it, Peter? I think I counted today something like half a dozen Holdens over my very young life, I hasten to add. My first car was a Holden Gemini. I loved them. And there was that sense of if you buy a Holden, you know, you're doing the right thing for Australia. Good on you. And that, of course, went awry the minute they stopped making the Commodore here. And there's people like me who'll be really sad that that's happened. We probably all, as you rightly point out, had the chance, well, if this is a real thing, let's buy one. And, of course, we didn't. And we don't really often, I think, in Australia answer that question, you know, buy Australian and save a business. Maybe we did a bit when SPC looked a bit dodgy there for a while.
Yeah,
but
we did.
What gets me, Peter, is the dealers. Now, I know a car industry insider who told me today that there was a dealership in rural Australia that was effectively told by Holden 8-9 months ago, you know, you've got to spruce up your premises here. You've got to tidy things up, do some development, some renovation. They did spend $300,000 or $400,000. No one will ever convince me that 8 or 9 or 12 months ago, Holden didn't exactly know what was going to happen here. They knew that once they took the Australian out of the Commodore, who's going to buy one of them? Really? We're buying SUVs, generally made in Asia now. So you had that happening. And there was another dealer I saw reported on this channel, I think in Adelaide, who was building new premises to move their Holden dealership into. Now, nothing. I reckon it's just been so poorly handled. And to think that there were people this week blaming the coalition government, of which you are a significant part as Chief of Staff to a Prime Minister, that not running down the road with a cheque, it's all about that, I think, frankly, is rubbish. Like most Australians, I'm really disappointed because it was a really Australian thing to do, to buy a Holden, but I reckon the company's got a few questions to answer here.
Yeah, look, and just on that point about industry subsidies, I mean, they had been going for many years across successive governments, Labor governments and coalition governments. And the rubber hit the road in 2013, 2014, when Holden and other domestic producers at that stage were basically blackmailing the coalition to say, if you don't put in X numbers of billions of dollars of taxpayer money into our private businesses, because that's what they are.
Yep.
The profit goes to shareholders. It won't go back to the Australian taxpayer.
Yep.
That's when Tony Abbott said, well, no, you stay here because you want to be here, and we'll certainly do as much as we can to make the playing field level. But we can't, with all the other things we need to spend money on, like hospitals and schools where there is no private sector alternative in broad terms, you can't do this. And these guys had no intention of staying in Australia because they were committed to Australia. They only stayed in Australia so far as they could milk taxpayer dollars. And it's clear, if you look at the General Motors plan coming out of Detroit, I agree with you, they would have known about this stuff for years potentially. They've wound back to China and the US markets only. So I'm just sorry the Australian taxpayers spend so much trying to keep them.
I'm with you. It's a great shame. But in Asia, I think I read through the week, so we were paying workers on average, because it was much more than this, I think $60,000 or $70,000. The equivalent wage at the time in Asia was $12,500. Well, what are you going to do? I mean, you're not making cars for fun, you're making them for profit. Now, if someone like government's tossing you $1 billion here or $100 million there, that's a game changer. But the other thing is, how strong were they in dealing with EBAs and unions? Because some of that stuff, particularly when it came to terminations, they quoted a figure of something like $1 million just to close down and pay out their staff. I mean, wow, it's a lot of money.
It is, look, we'll get on to this issue more broadly tonight, but we are in one of the most competitive regions in the world, which is Asia. We'll never be able to compete with our nations to the north on labour costs, on what we pay our workers, nor should we. Australians should earn a good wage.
Exactly.
One area we've always been able to compete, we can see how much coal and energy we have to, and gas and uranium that we have to ship to our neighbours, is they don't have what we have here. So energy had always been our trump card, cheap energy. Now that we're pricing ourselves out of the energy market as well, and we've got high wages, you know, Australians need to understand there are not many businesses that can survive in Australia against competitors on wages and on power prices.
Spot on.
And this is where the rubber hits the where the rubber hits the road.
Double
and tough choices have to be made.
Indeed.
Tough choices have to be made by consumers. What sort of standard of living do they want going into the future?